Okay, make you.
I do not disbelieve in God because of the Big Bang Theory and my belief in
That's not
in
our
science.
discussion.
But what
By the way,
the
Alfred,
reason
that's
why
not our discussion.
well, no, because you were saying that I've sort of surrendered myself onto these scientists.
The discussion about the existence of God will come to the point. That's not our discussion. Our discussion now is as follows. You said you are atheist, correct?
Yes.
And that includes you don't believe in a faith system, correct? Means there is no faith that you believe in. What is faith? Is basically is to accept, people's testimony about certain things which is you didn't see, but you accept their testimony because you trust their argument or you trust them. That is faith.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that definition.
You don't agree? Okay. Can you please define me the faith system so I'll understand so we'll be on one page.
Okay, so
let's define the definition first.
So faith is the idea of an acceptance of a truth, not necessarily based on merely sort of evidence, but instead.
That's your definition of it, you know that. But anyway, I will accept it, no problem. That's your definition. You have your own definition now of faith now. It's not the one which is generally it is. But anyway, it's okay.
Faith based on evidence. So the way that a bishop, a Christian bishop once explained it, which I quite liked, he said, it is not sort of irrational, it is like supra-rational. In other words, it's not so much that, I won't be able to fully recreate his words, but in other words, he said, it's as if, not so much that he, had his faith because, of no evidence, but because of a sense that he had, a sort of deep inner sense of, yes, I believe in this. He equated it to, like, if you have a friend, you'll sort of you'll believe in them and you'll trust them sort of instinctively based on what you already know in the past. So, in other words,
I think that's more of a Christian.
Well,
yeah, listen, here we have something. There are different definitions. They said, for example, the faith, a complete trust or confidence in someone or something. So you have a complete trust in someone or something, which are the scientists, without you doing the research. Listen, you haven't done the research.
Faith. What I would say is this. So there was a book, I don't know if you ever read it, it's called How the World Thinks.
Okay.
It's about sort of the different schools of thought throughout the world.
Yeah.
And he mentioned at one point that there's an Indian tradition of, I think it was something like 5 or maybe more sort of sources we have of truth or of knowledge.
Okay.
One of them was
my coffee.
One of them was sort of,
become cold, but it's okay. I drink cold.
One of them was like sort of the empirical. So like what
you want to get your coffee or something, but sure.
So one of them was the sort of the testimony of reliable witnesses. One of them was was a kind of sort of logical deduction from a previous piece of information. Then there was a kind of revelation, I believe, one of them, and then there was another which was kind of.
Alfred, we are drifting away from our discussion.
So my point was, and I can't remember all the ones I mentioned, but there are various different sources that we can obtain knowledge from. So I would say the testimony of reliable experts or witnesses is only one of them. There are several.
There are no witnesses, by the way. They have theory. I will tell you something, and let me educate you a bit. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not here to show arrogance or but I just wanted to let you know, because I myself I'm a scientist. If even though that I don't know if mathematicians consider to be scientists, by the way. But anyway, it's because in the past they used to have their own faculty. By the way, in the past they used to say they have their own way of it. So my point is, I'm a mathematician myself. Yeah, and I have studied many of these theories. The issue is, that's where maths actually clashes with science. How? Because with scientists, mathematicians, how they clash with scientists. Because mathematicians, we have these standards in terms of theories to accept a theory. When we have a theory, This theory shouldn't have any single example, any counter-example, contradict that theory. And that's to accept it in mathematics, to accept a theory as a theory, we shouldn't have any counter-example. Now, the problem with the scientists, no, they said, overwhelming evidences it indicate this, even though there are some examples counter it. Do you see the point? So they will say, yeah, there are some overwhelming evidences. So they will rely on overwhelming evidences, and that's what, in terms of physics and cosmology and other things. The problem is, we're not talking about an overwhelming evidences. We're talking about even these evidences that they use. All of them doesn't even reach to the level of hypothesis. There could be a hypothesis. It's an assumption. Even the Big Bang, there are no single evidence about the Big Bang. They said because what happens because of the turn of the redness, for example. That's why they believe that the universe is expanding. They said if it expands, that means there should be a point at certain point. Used to be singular, used to be together at one point. That's the idea. That's how they are thinking. The problem is to think in this way, to say there should be a single thing or a singular thing, or to be at certain point at that point. They literally have no single evidence to confirm this at all. It's just an assumption, because they said, for example, if you are how they said if you are on the other side of the ocean and you see a wave, coming to the shore of the ocean, that means that wave had started at certain point. That means when you go back, that's how it is. So basically, they said when you go back, that there is a starting point for it. So that's their assumption. Now, and that's why they have no clue, no evidence to say that there is a Big Bang that happened. It is an assumption. So there is no single evidence affirming this. That's our point. Let alone everything that relies on this theory, including evolution, everything that relies on this theory. Because what happened? They said, okay, this is a coincidence, because they wanted to use the coincidence. There are some coincidence that happens. How this Big Bang happens, because it was a coincidence. Then this Big Bang happens. And after this Big Bang, things evolved. And the same thing, even in terms of singularity. We know, for example, bang is a sign of destruction rather than building. And then to say these things evolved and then to be at a certain point, very condensed point, and then it evolved again, it has its own issues, it has its own problems. Let alone as well that the earth to be here, to exist at this stage and this point, and let alone as well the things to exist, that because of the existence of the water, the existence of all of these things getting together, and then in order to create the first cell, and this first cell evolved to for example, to multiple cell creatures, and then this multiple cell evolves over a period of time. They said give it millions of years. The problem is all of these are, hypotheses. They put it just to stop a beautiful person like yourself, a beautiful historian like yourself, to stop thinking on this. They don't want you to think.
Well, so in response to a couple things there. So first of all, you say that the theory of evolution relies upon the Big Bang theory. It doesn't. The evidence for evolution, I mean, even if the Big Bang theory turned out to be wrong, the evidence for evolution wouldn't disappear. We still have, the fact that you can witness, the process of, genetic breeding, how we can, shape, plants and animals, and we can then go back to the fossil record and
even by the way, even with the fossil record, and we'll come to the point, by the way, even with this evolution, even with the fossil record. Now listen to this, yeah. Their hypothesis is as follows, yeah. What happens with all of these things? The first cell, how the first cell was created, again, it's vague, because they can't even say the same thing about the singularity, about the universe. They couldn't explain. And then they said they could be at certain heat, at certain temperature, at certain things. Lightning came, all of these things. At one point, then the first cell occurs. Yeah. Let's agree on this. Yeah. The question is, now this first cell, how did it realize how to survive? The first cell. There is a first cell. You need this first cell to survive, correct? This first cell, when it occurs, how did it rely how to survive? Yeah, because you need to know as well, there are some kind of consciousness in a way or another that at least, I will not say the full consciousness, at least just to be cautious not to basically instinct, yeah, to, to die. At least something to survive. So it should have a pre-information. That information has to exist in that first cell to realize that in order to survive, they had to do certain process, even simpler process.
Are you asking about the beginning of DNA?
For example,
So in other words, there's a.
have you studied it? Have you studied it?
No, as I said,
So it's another faith.
No. I mean, what I'm saying is that the two main questions, because I assume you may have heard of the term "the God of the gaps." Have you heard that expression?
No. I understand. I understand where the scientists they come from.
Well, so,
I know how they try to,
Well, so it's the expression used to refer to how divine explanations have historically been given to explain things that human beings otherwise couldn't explain, and then the more explanations that we then have, the more we understand about the world, the fewer things are therefore explained through God. So, thousands of years ago, the Greeks would say, because they didn't know why there was winter and why there was summer, so they then said, well, like Hades kidnaps the daughter of the goddess that caused, summer. So, and there's a whole myth about that and so on. The Norse would say, well, why is there lightning? Well, it's because of Thor and so on. Why are there animals? Well,
but it wasn't the interpretation of the Muslims. Never was the interpretation of the Muslims. It was never. Even though Islam was way. By the way, we believe all prophets they preach Islam, and all Muslims they preach Islam, and all of them they came with this with the main thing. Of course, this world is a world of reasoning, and there are certain things that happens with the reason. There are things that happen. We understand it. And by the way, I'm not denying about, for example, adaptation with the animals. I'm not denying that there could be an element of evolvement, for example, between the creatures. That certain things. I'm not saying it's totally not true. There could be, for example, some kind of development between certain horses and donkeys and things like that. There could be kind of a common ancestor or whatever. That's something I'm not saying this totally, is not there. But what I'm saying, when it comes to, when it comes to the human being, that's a special creation of God, firstly. And when it comes as well, and even with certain creatures as well, for the way that it is, because you need to know. And again, here we're not filling the gaps by the existence of God. No, we're not doing this. We're saying all these questions, which you or try to rely on your faith in these scientists, which is faith, by the way. But don't deny it. It's a faith.
Well, no,
Alfred. Let's call things as it is. Let's call sun as sun. We don't call this as moon with sun. Correct? Let's call this tree as a tree. When we have faith in something, it's a faith. Don't call it something.
We've been hopping from topic to topic. We haven't really gone to actually sort of finish any of them.
Yeah.
So I never really got around to explaining why I didn't think that was an
Yes, that's why I wanted to go to the first question. Now, describe faith, and do you follow that faith, the faith of atheism, which is faith? Let's use this term. Let's use this term of faith.
If you're using the term faith just to refer to very strong belief, then we can just call it belief.
No, I'll call it faith. It's called faith in English. English is not my first language. I know what it means to you, so you know what faith is, and I know what faith is. Let's use that term. So you have the faith in this. Because
faith, as you describe it, as you define it, then sure. But
as not me. It's not me who describe it. It's not me. It's not me. We said to you. So we're not using here. We said it's a complete trust, or confidence in someone or something. So you have a complete trust
in kind of I don't think I would say that I have complete trust in this theory or this science and so on. I believe that the scientific process has its merits. That is not the same. I mean, at that point, that's just any belief you could describe.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Can I say something? Let me tell you something. In terms of science, how they describe something, it's true. They will do some kind of experiment on certain things. They will see, they are eyewitness for this experiment. They will add, for example, oxygen and hydrogen, and they will see how does it go, and they will see the water, for example. Yeah. So they will do certain things. So there is a process to do certain things. No problem. This is science, which is fine. I have no problem with this. But when you are describing the existence of the universe, when you are describing the existence, for example, of the first cell, or the existence of the creatures, and then to say to them using analogy which has nothing to do with it, then that's false, basically. It's even doesn't reach to the level of hypothesis. And hypothesis, it should have some kind of, to see things. But this is total assumption, which someone like you will believe in this.
Well, so some things we can be more confident about than others. So a scientist might say, right, we have, done these experiments on X, whatever X happens to be. We have a strong amount of evidence that this is correct. And then there's this other thing where there isn't as much, but we have these, based on what evidence we do have, we have this theory that so-and-so might be the case. You can believe, unless given sufficient reason otherwise, in that thing without being like absolutely sure of, yes, like I'm 100%, like I'm not, 100% absolutely diehard certain in the Big Bang Theory.
Okay, good. Which is good. Which we are on one page. At least we are close to one page.
Yeah.
We're close now.
Because, but here's the thing. You asked me about where the universe comes from in response to hearing that I didn't believe in God. Now, what I would explain, and this is why I don't think of my atheism as a faith, is, so my reason is, put simply, that have you ever heard of Christopher Hitchens?
Yeah, kind of.
He once said, either God created man or man created many gods. And so when you look at
and I believe, by the way, that both of them are both of this is true, because God created man, true, and men as well. They created many gods. They worship other than, and those are, but not the ones who are worthy to be worshipped, which is true.
But when you're looking at something in a religious discussion, or you're trying to decide whether or not to believe in something regarding religion, you should look at it and think, which of these two explanations makes more sense based on the piece of evidence that you're looking at the time? So would this make more sense if God created man or anything?
I said to you both. I said to you, God created man, which is true, and men, that I believe this is true, and I believe as well, men as well created many gods, including atheists. They have their own gods. What's their gods, basically? What's their god? Faith in science. So even not science. Faith in these hypotheses, which they call it science, which is not science.
I mean,
but that's faith. But that's faith.
Now you're slightly twisting the definition of the word God. But my point.
I just want to give my salams. I've seen you on the YouTube, and I think your manners are impeccable.
Allah accept from us and you. Thank you, my brother. Salam alaikum, my brother.
So if I look at the main reason why I would say I don't believe in any religion is that when I look, particularly at history, because that's my speciality, and I look at the history of the world and the history of these faiths, these events and these stories, to me, make more sense if these religions are the product of human development, of human culture, than they would if they were the product of divine
We'll come to that one, by the way.
So that is the reason. So all this talk of the Big Bang Theory is actually, that's not really that important.
We'll come to that one, by the way. We'll come to that one. Which religion is there? Now, if there is God, that means there should be a faith, basically. There should be a religion. If there is God, then there should be a religion. There should be one single religion, not multiple ones. But this is a different discussion. Our discussion is you accept in the beginning that, okay, since this universe existed, which you accept it exists, not something I think I exist. So you said it exists. Now the question is, how did this universe come into existence? It can't be there forever. It can't be there for infinity at the end of the day, because again, infinity, as I said, is a hypothesis. I'm a mathematician. I don't know where we use it's a hypothesis. It's assumption. It's not a real number that we use, but just only it's a representation of something rather than to be a number. So it's not. And since this universe is finite, that it can be infinite, and it can't refer to infinite. That's one thing. The other thing as well, adding to this, if this universe, if this universe came into existence, so it should have a starting point. That starting point, either that the universe created itself by itself. Do you accept this?
Well, so what I would say, and this is what I was trying to get at before, is that the value of scientific discoveries is based on the fact that you cannot, give the answer unless you have some evidence.
But they have already done that.
Well, no. So
they already fell into this.
Hang on. No, wait. And so therefore, if scientists said we have the answer for everything immediately, then they would discredit themselves. And so it is perfectly possible for them and for me to admit we do not yet have, and we probably never will have, the answers to every single question, but we have more answers than we used to. So this is what I was talking about with the gaps. So we used to not know a great amount about what we now know about the world and natural processes. Evolution would be an example. And so we are figuring out more things as we go along. There are still things to be discovered, and the two main ones are what caused, if there is a Big Bang, what caused the Big Bang?
Okay.
And then the other main one is where does
there is no
DNA
Big Bang again. You see here, but listen to this. Listen, it's like now again. If there is a Big Bang, what caused it? So the problem is, I'm talking about the singularity, even as it is as a starting point, how it came into existence. Do you see the point? Well, so that's why.
So there's the two. So like I said, those are probably the two main things. So the two most important questions that we have not yet answered. That doesn't mean we never will. It means we haven't yet.
Let's use our mathematical, for example. Let me use my mathematical method, for example, to see. Now, either this universe was there forever, means infinitely was there, which could be, as you mentioned. Either this universe created itself by itself, which is another, could be. Either this universe as well came into existence by a creator, which is another possibility. So someone created this universe to make it exist. Is there any other possibility? Do you have any other possibility that you think about?
Aside from infinite regression, the universe creating itself, and prime mover.
Which is prime mover. Is there anything else? Do you have anything in your mind?
I suppose you could, theoretically suggest that there was a sort of cyclical nature.
But that's again the infinite one, the cyclical nature. That's the infinite one.
That's what they said.
They said. So it's basically it will expand and then it will come to, and then it will go. What do you call it? Expand was the other term goes in.
Retract.
Retract, for example, and then it goes back. Then it will expand again. So that's the infinite thing. That's the infinite, by the way.
In a different way, but
yeah, in a different way. So that goes to infinite. Yeah, that goes back to the infinite. Discussion. So now here to say it's infinite, again, infinite. It is an assumed, figure, represents something, a huge number, something big, cannot be comprehended. Still, it's not a number. So that's why it doesn't exist in the real life. Basically, there is no infinite number in the universe. There is nothing called infinite. Even all the particles of this universe, are finite. Yeah, everything in this universe is finite. Yes, we know it's a huge number, but it's finite. Still, it's finite. Yeah. So there is no infinite in the existence. Something is infinite. To say, as in, so I'm talking about this universe, in the existence of the universe, there is nothing called infinite. Yeah.
But you believe surely that in the sort of afterlife there is infinity. So it's like infinite.
We'll come to the point. I'm talking about this universe. We are bounded with this universe. We are bounded with this. Like for example, for example, later on we're gonna have, maybe in the future we're gonna have our own meta life. Yeah, correct. You know what this meta is, which is invented by Facebook, and which basically we have a digital life. We have our life. We'll have a digital life inside the computers and inside.
Upload our
could be, and we be there. So the thing is, it's still within the digital system, correct? So there are gonna be certain rulings in that system which cannot be go cross the boundaries of that system, basically. So isn't within that system, yeah? So the point is not necessarily putting this, and even just only us, just to go and to have this VR and to have these, you know, earphones and just focus on that, still within the digital system. Meaning if someone unplugged the electricity somewhere, or the electricity is finished, then everything will collapse, basically. So if there is no source of the electric, for example, electricity in that system as a whole. My point is that that we in this universe, we live in a system that things are finite. There are nothing infinite in the system that we are living in. Yeah. So that's why to assume this universe to say was infinite or started with infinite, then again that contradicts against the very same concept about the finite universe, because still it's finite. And to say about the timing is the infinite, and again, you know, what do you mean by timing? Since this universe, there is evolvement, there is a starting point. That means there is a starting point. And by the way, they accepted that there is a starting point. They have, even all cosmologists, they accept there is a starting point. You name it Big Bang, you name it whatever, you know. So there is a starting point. So since there is a starting point, so it's impossible to assume it was infinite. It's impossible. So you cannot assume, you cannot basically put or place infinite timing into this process, basically. Because the whole system that we are in, this universe is finite, including the time is finite in it. So that's how it is. Now, all this universe created itself by itself. Yeah? Which another assumption. And again, which means the universe has to pre-exist before existence. It has to pre-exist before existence. Like for example, to give birth to yourself. You have to be there before you are there, and then to decide to make yourself. Or by the way, there is another assumption that this universe came by nothing. Absolutely nothing. It came into existence. Do you accept this? That the universe came by nothing? Came out of nothing, out of nowhere? Do you accept this?
I would say that I don't claim to know the beginning of the universe. What I can
that's
say,
not my question. Listen, Alfred.
Well, no, but you asked me
I'm asking you.
No question.
Yeah, and then after we'll elaborate.
I can't give it.
No,
yes
I'm talking about. Listen, I'm saying. Okay, let me finish then my argument, and then you say what you wanted to say. So, or to say this universe created, or this universe came from nothing, and we know nothing means the absence of everything, including energy, including everything. Nothing. So, yeah. So that's why nothing produced nothing. And it's with the simplest reasoning, logical argument, nothing doesn't have nothing, basically. Absence of everything, yeah? So again, all this universe came into existence by a creator. And that's what we are saying, okay, actually it should be with that. Now, what's your